maybe that is the way to start a religion. Do something completely absurd and people will be interested.
You're listening to episode 55 of the National Secular Society podcast produced by Emma Park. After a few weeks pause for the summer, I'm now back to present our usual fortnightly podcasts. Between now and Christmas, we've got a range of episodes lined up on the key secularist issues of the day. I'll be interviewing guests on topics from law reform to education and from British politics to secularism around the world. This episode, I'm starting on a lighter note with the topic of Pastafarianism. As you may know, this movement was born in 2005 with an open letter from a young physics graduate, Bobby Henderson, to the Kansas School Board. The aim of the letter was to protest against the possibility, under consideration by the board, of allowing intelligent design or creationism to be taught in schools alongside the theory of evolution. Henderson purported to believe, among other things, that the world was created by a flying spaghetti monster and that the decrease in the global pirate population since the 1800s was a direct cause of global warming. He argued that if the Christian theory of intelligent design should be taught in schools, equal time should be given to flying spaghetti monsterism, otherwise known as Pastafarianism. In 2005, the internet was relatively young. Facebook had only been invented the previous year, but the World Wide Web was developed enough for Henderson's letter to go viral, giving rise to a movement that has continued to grow and evolve in perhaps unexpected ways. In 2006, Henderson published The Gospel of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, setting out the supposed beliefs of Pastafarianism and 8 I'd really rather you didn't, modelled on the Ten Commandments. Today, some even claim that Pastafarianism is the world's fastest growing religion. It has certainly annoyed the authorities in some places. In Greece in 2012, a 27-year-old man was given a suspended jail sentence for running a Facebook page, Elder Pastitsios, a Pastafarian parody of Elder Paisios, a holy monk. In Russia last year, Mikhail Yosilovich, the leader of the Church of the FSM in Nizhny Novgorod, was arrested on charges of association with an undesirable political organization. But is Pastafarianism really a religion? If not, what distinguishes a flying spaghetti monster from any other supernatural being, or wearing a colander from donning any other garb in the name of one's beliefs? For secularists, perhaps the most important point is that Pastafarianism has been invoked several times, with mixed success, to challenge the right of religious organizations to special privileges and exemptions, as well as to have their doctrines taught in school on a par with scientific theories. Indeed, it might be argued that Pastafarianism poses a fundamental challenge to the state's attempts to define religion in a coherent way, or in a way that justifies its special treatment in the law of many democracies. To explore these questions, I will be speaking in turn to 3 guests with different perspectives on Pastafarianism and the meaning of religion. My first guest is Dirk Venema, an assistant professor of legal philosophy at the Open University in the Netherlands and a former secondary school German teacher. Dirk featured in the documentary I, Pastafari, which came out last year, as the legal representative of Pastafarians fighting for their right to wear a colander on their head in their driving license photo. Dirk Venema, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
First of all, you featured in the documentary I, Pastafari. How did you become involved in representing 3 Pastafarians in the Dutch courts?
Well, I actually represented 2 of them. The other was represented by someone else. The first who went to court was the founder of the Dutch Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, Dirk-Jan Dijkstra. But this was before I had even heard of this religion in 2014, that was, I think. But in 2016, I was teaching an introductory course to the philosophy of law to law students. And human rights was an important angle in this course. And I was looking for examples on the internet, questions philosophically interesting concerning the freedom of religion. And then I discovered that in a nearby university, there was a student who was challenging the rejection of his driver's license application because of the spaghetti strainer he was wearing in the photograph. And he said he was a Pastafarian, a member of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, but apparently the city didn't accept that as a valid reason for wearing that spaghetti strainer on his head, and he was challenging this decision, this rejection, and he would appear on before a commission that would handle his case. The Dutch Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster had decided that this would be a Pastafarian mass. And normally these sittings are not public, but the city decided apparently that they would accommodate the Pastafarians and make it public. I explained all this to the students because I thought it was a fun and a fun example, and it would appeal to them to discuss the problem of what is actually a religion, and when do the freedom of religion rights and privileges apply to you. In other words, when do you actually have a real religion? So I saw on Facebook that the Dutch Pastafarians had proclaimed it as a Pastafarian mass, and one of the students suggested it would be a nice field trip. And well, of all the couple of hundred students, only a couple went with me to this commission hearing. But this was one of the most hilarious things I have ever witnessed, because this student who explained his case and said that he really was a believer, a Pastafarian, who needed to wear the colander on his head for religious reasons. He was, well, in our view, he was playing his role excellently, and the commission really had a tough time not laughing and keeping a straight face, and so did we. And in the improvised public gallery, we bit our tongues and tried not to laugh. And then afterwards, we met with the applicant, which is Matej, the guy I represented, and which was also recorded in the documentary, and we discovered that, well, although he thought it was a fun experience too, he was also very serious about the underlying questions. The questions about when and how do administrative bodies get to decide what is a religion and what is not, and who gets to enjoy religious privileges and who doesn't. And then his legal representative at that time was Dirk-Jan Dijkstra, who was also the founder of the Dutch Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. And then they asked me to represent this student, Matej, for the next step when we took the case to court, because obviously we all knew that the commission would deny the application again. So then they asked me to represent him, and then one of the students, who is Mienke de Wilde, who she later also joined the Dutch Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, and also applied for a driver's license with a colander photo, and also got her application rejected. So, and then together with her, we developed most of the arguments in her case. So I handled that case as well.
And these two cases were heard separately?
Yes, they were separate. Yeah.
So Mieke was originally one of your students then?
Exactly, yes.
And she was inspired to wear the colander as a result of the field trip?
Yeah, yes, she was, yes.
So in Miike's and Matej's cases, what legal points did the two cases ultimately turn on, and what was the basis for the judge's decisions? I mean, did they both reject their right to wear the colander in their driving license photo?
Yes. In both cases, the right was rejected. Miike's case was the only case that we took all the way to the highest administrative court in the Netherlands, where we lost, and now it is the case is riping, as we say, in Strasbourg, where at the European Court of Human Rights. So the legal point is that in the Netherlands, if you apply for an official photo ID, a driver's license or an ID card or a passport, you need a photo without any headwear, except if headwear is necessary for medical or religious reasons. And so if you have if you want to wear a headscarf, for example, and you say, I'm a Muslim, it's no problem, you can wear it as long as your face is visible enough. The same goes for other religions, for Sikhs, for example, or for Jews who wear religious headwear. But if you say you are a Pastafarian, well, they look a bit strange, and I think, they are trying to put me on. And of course, civil servants do not like to be put on, and so they tend to reject these these applications. We even discovered that there was a lot of communication by city administrations with the Ministry for the Interior, where they were advised to deny all these applications by people who wear spaghetti strainers on their heads. So what it turns around is the question: is it a religious reason to wear? Do you have a bona fide religious reason to wear a colander on your head? And for that, there is no, well, in most Western countries, there's no such thing as an exhaustive list of recognized religions or anything, and neither do we have legal definitions of religion. But the European Court of Human Rights does have some sort of a definition, and that is what courts use in Europe. And well, it's not an actual definition; it's rather sort of a set of parameters, and it reads as follows. Literally, it's: the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion denotes views that attain a certain level of cogency, seriousness, cohesion, and importance. This was used in several cases by the European Court of Human Rights, and what it ultimately turns on is the seriousness criterion, which is obvious, probably, because of the many parody and satire elements in Pastafarianism. So Dutch administration of officials and judges, they have consistently not accepted the seriousness of the believers in question. So they say, well, you're okay, cogent. It's cogent enough. It's there is enough cohesion in the belief and the gospel of the flying spaghetti monster. But there's enough importance, and importance is actually an easy criterion, because that only means how important it is to the believer himself.
Right. So purely subjective then.
Yeah, so that's subjective, and that's an easy hurdle to take. But the seriousness, that's the problem, because they say, well, there is an element of parody, and it's so pervasive, this parody element, that there is not enough seriousness left. So we cannot call this a religion in the legal sense of the European Court of Human Rights. So you don't have religious reasons for your colander, so we cannot accept this photograph.
And so currently, Pastafarianism in general in the Netherlands just doesn't have any recognized legal status.
It does and it doesn't, because this the same Dirk Jan, who founded the Dutch Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, he got the church recognized at the Chamber of Commerce, which is a separate procedure. It's just to register an organization, such as an association or a foundation. You have to register with the Chamber of Commerce, and the church is a separate form of organization.
Does that have to satisfy any religious criteria?
Hardly. It's a much easier procedure.
So it is recognized as specifically a church.
Yes. It's a church as a specific form of organization, and not as not recognized in the sense of that it is a real or official religion. So those are two separate things, and we tried to use this fact that the Chamber of Commerce did accept the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster as a church organization in the procedure before the administrative court, but they did not accept it. They said, no, that's another administrative body, and we are not bound to its decisions. So tough luck.
So apart from ID cards and this sort of administrative recognition of the Pastafarianism as a church in the Netherlands, or under what circumstances might the courts in the Netherlands or in any Western democracy need to consider, or have they considered what counts as a bona fide religion?
Well, in theory, there would be numerous occasions, theoretically, as many as there are laws awarding special rights or privileges, exemptions, facilities to religious persons as opposed to non-religious persons. So if you want to get any of those facilities or privileges with your small, unknown, new, or strange religion, you might end up in court. And an example is that in the Netherlands, members of the Santo Daime Church, which is a church originating in South America, it's a hodgepodge of indigenous and cultural in Catholic elements, and they have been prosecuted in the Netherlands for trafficking Class A drugs, namely DMT, which is used in the ayahuasca tea, which they take in their mass, and then they vomit violently and then hallucinate and experience contact with the Virgin Mary or something. So this Class A drugs, dimethyltryptamine, DMT, they were arrested for having it, and then they said, no, this is our freedom of religion. We cannot express our religion when we do not take these drugs. And the court actually decided in a couple of cases that, okay, freedom of religion in this case trumps the health legislation. And the court in these cases was quickly convinced, actually, that Santo Daime was a real religion. They just heard an anthropologist who explained the origin of this church in South America around a century ago, and so they said, okay, well, that sounds like a true story. It is a religion, and okay, go and drink your tea, vomit, and hallucinate.
You've mentioned the definition that the ECHR, or the rough definition it's given of religion. So the case that you've got, Mika's case that's currently awaiting sort of consideration, is that the first case on Pastafarianism, or will it be?
Yes. Before the European Court of Human Rights, it's the first. Although Nico Alm has also filed a case which has been accepted, but now it has yet to be handled, and we don't know when that will be. And if I remember correctly, the German Pastafarians also filed a case which was rejected.
Do you have any sense for how you think the court might judge your case?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very difficult. Some of my colleagues have told me that we don't stand a chance, but I'm not so sure, because, well, the reason the courts in the Netherlands have rejected our case is because they say the parody or the satire element is too great. It's all parody. But I hope that the European Court of Human Rights does recognize that the parody is in the form of getting the message across. The method we try, not we, because I'm not a member of the church, but they try to get their message across and inform people of their religion. You can call that a parody, but the message itself is really serious. It's a message of it's an ethics of equality, of anti-authoritarianism, non-violence, tolerance, modesty, secularist government, and of course humor. And they put this in the 8 "I'd rather you didn't," which are like commandments, but less strong.
Not commandments. Yes.
Yeah. So and this is also, of course, parody. But on the other hand, so they use parody, and they use the internet, and they use all these fun ways to get their message across, to inform people. It's just a different method. I mean, St. Paul wrote letters to the Romans, but Pastafarians go to court with colanders on their heads because it appeals to the public more in this time, I think.
It is a sort of religion or spoof religion of the internet, isn't it? Really?
Yes. Also, yes, it is. And well, about the parody thing, I don't think it really sets Pastafarianism so much apart from other religions, because if you consider Mormonism, for example, Mormon faith has such a hilarious origin. Well, it's hard to believe that anyone would take it seriously.
The Book of Mormon almost sounds like a parodic version of the Old Testament.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's hilarious. It says that Jesus appeared in the United States before it was the United States, and there was a whole community there which then disappeared, and then he got Joseph Smith. He received golden plates with old Egyptian writing on it, and then he got a magic stone which helped him translate it, etc., etc. It's hilarious. But maybe that is the way to start a religion. Do something completely absurd, and people will be interested. And maybe in the 1st century AD, Jews thought that Christianity was a bad joke and a parody of the real religion. So it's what. When is something a parody? It's a question of probably how old the religion is, if it is seen as a parody or as something more serious.
Well, this idea of seriousness, and because of you say, the Pastafarians have this serious message, but I suppose one thing they don't presumably believe seriously is the fact that there is the idea that there is a flying spaghetti monster. Does the seriousness of a religion have to relate to, I don't know, belief in a supernatural being or belief in anything specific?
Well, there has never been agreement amongst scientists or theologians or religious people on a definition of religion. So if there has to be something transcendent, yes or no? Well, is Buddhism a religion? Yes, according to almost everyone. But does Buddhism really have gods and transcendence? I don't know. But so that's an open question, whether there is any criterion to call something a religion or not. And if you that was one of the funny things in the case of Mattei. At some point in court, the judge asked me, well, I read this in this gospel that something about cable TV, but presumably this should have been. This was written a couple of thousand years ago. So how do you see that? And so I asked the judge, "Are you seriously asking me to comment on the historic correctness of religious texts?" And then he said, no, and went on to the next point. Do you believe in a flying spaghetti monster? What does that mean? It can mean a lot of things. It can mean, for example, that it's to call your supreme being by such an absurd name may mean that it is absurd to want to describe the supreme being. For example, it doesn't have to mean that you actually believe that there is an invisible being made of
pasta and meatballs.
and yeah, so it often comes up. They say, "Oh, this is ridiculous because of you don't really believe that there is a flying spaghetti monster, do you?" Well, that depends on how you interpret it, which also goes for. There are very few Christians who take the Bible from A to Z completely literally. So if you start admitting that you don't have to take it literally, all the texts of your religion, then you don't have any criterion anymore to say, well, if you don't take it literally, then you're not a serious believer. It's a matter of interpretation and experience.
Yeah. So, I mean, indeed, where do you draw the line? I mean, the court thought that the belief in a flying spaghetti monster is not serious, but does that mean the court is entitled to say what sort of thing might be the object of a serious belief? Is it okay to have a serious belief that God created the world in 6 days, for example?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is that historically correct? And if not, is it then a non bona fide belief? Yeah.
Do you think, therefore, that Pastafarianism as a movement challenges this idea that religious adherents or organizations deserve special privileges and tax breaks simply because they're religious.
Yes, absolutely, it does. Not explicitly. So Pastafarians would, I think, not so much say that they are against religious rights, because they say they have a religion, and so they want these religious rights, of course. Pastafarianism as a phenomenon, yes, it does challenge this idea, because it helps to show how ridiculous it is to award special privileges to people or to organizations just because they are religious. There are many organizations built around ideals or opinions, and they do not have these privileges or facilities that are awarded to organizations that can successfully tick the religious box.
Is the conclusion to all this then that if we were able in a secular society ideally to safeguard human rights without reference to religion, I mean, this would have the added advantage that then the state, the law courts or the administrative bodies and so forth would simply not be required to look into the seriousness or otherwise of religious belief.
Exactly. If you do away with all these special privileges, rights, and facilities for religious organizations or people, then government bodies wouldn't have to decide who gets to enjoy these privileges and who doesn't, and because some religions are real and others are not, which is, of course, a very strange thing to have to decide for the administration, because there is freedom of religion, which should mean that any religion should have all the freedoms of any other religion, and now that is not the case, precisely because of this unease people feel with these for example, Pastafarianism. They think it's a practical joke, and they don't want to be made a fool of. And adherents of traditional religions, they are frightened because they think they are being made fun of, and pretty soon everyone will see that any religion is just an opinion backed by an age-old organization.
And just one final question then. Have you yourself ever considered becoming a Pastafarian?
No, I've never considered joining any groups or organizations that are founded on a specific idea, because I don't want to be associated with any specific idea or ideology. As a philosopher, I want to be free to think and express anything I want, which I could still do as a Pastafarian, which is one of the paradoxes in the Pastafarian faith.
Dirk Venema, thank you very much.
Thank you.
My second guest is Tanya Watkins, the self-appointed captain of the Australian Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. Tanya is a student of religion and law at Deakin University and a carer. She'll be talking to me about her unsuccessful attempts to win legal recognition for her church in Australia. Captain Tanya Watkins, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Pastafarianism started in 2005 with a letter by Bobby Henderson, a recent physics graduate, to the Kansas Board of Education to protest effectively against the fact that intelligent design was being taught on a level with evolution in schools. But how has Pastafarianism evolved since then from a simple idea of protest into a worldwide movement?
Well, I think that Bobby's letter really, the whole concept behind it, really attracted people's interest, because they had this certain idea that religious privilege was not a good thing, and trying to teach evolution alongside creationism in a science classroom is just not a good thing. because you're presenting something that is a belief as being a fact.
So that was the beginning. So a protest specifically against creationism. But what about, I mean, since then, there have been many, many other developments to Pastafarianism, the idea of pirates, climate change, the idea of wearing a colander on your head.
Because so many people were interested in what Bobby was saying, he got a book deal. And so he wrote the Gospel of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. And that kind of brought out more, I guess, details on, how people should live their lives while at the same time questioning faith and all of these other things that are going on in the world. And it just really struck more and more chords with people around the world, and people thought, yeah, hold on, he's onto something here. And so from there, it grew online. There's only one physical church, I think, in the world, and that's in Germany. And the rest of us, we're just an entirely online community, although we do things out in the real world. And it just snowballed. As more people learnt about it, it became a thing that got its own law. And, we have different sects. We have the pirate sect where people dress up as pirates. And then we have the colander sect where people put colanders on their heads. And then we have a whole group of people who don't dress up at all.
What criteria do you have to fulfill in order to be a Pastafarian?
Just want to be one. That's it.
Just to declare that you are one.
Exactly. Yes.
What does Pastafarianism mean to you personally?
Well, to me personally, it's a whole life philosophy, because if you look at what it's saying just be nice to other people. You're not better than anybody else. We're all equal. We're all the same. Just be nice to everyone.
How popular is Pastafarianism down under?
That's very difficult to gauge, because we have a lot of people who aren't necessarily joining in with the online communities, but they do identify themselves as Pastafarians, and they go out and do things, and then I hear about them, so I know those people are out there. Online, we have a community of about 6,500. And according to the last census, there's possibly up to 100,000 of us.
How did you become captain of the Flying Spaghetti Monster Church? And what do you actually have to do as captain?
I saw a whole load of Pastafarians out there in the world who didn't have one solid place to go to. So I just basically created, it started on Facebook. I just started the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster Australia, declared myself official, and people followed.
Right. So it's all self-declaration then.
Well, we all are. All religion is self-declaration.
Sure. And what do you now do as captain?
Well, I try to get us recognition. I also run the community, so I look after people. If people need help, I give them help. I try to stop people from arguing. I try to inform them about human rights, equality, and about why they should be nice to other people.
How long have you been a Pastafarian for?
Since, I think, 2012.
So just maybe a year after that then, since 2013 onwards, you've made several applications, all of which have been unsuccessful so far.
Yeah, 3 applications, yes.
3 applications. Good. To have the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster in Australia legally incorporated.
Yeah, just as an association.
Right. What would be the purpose of incorporation?
Well, when you're incorporated, you become, well, you don't become, the incorporation becomes a legal person. So it's able to have a bank account, it's able to own assets, it's able to enter into contracts, all of those sorts of things that, your basic church can do.
Would it be in keeping with the original spirit of Pastafarianism as being quite sort of anarchic to start getting all the same sort of structures as a religion, an organized religion?
Not really, because one of the things in the gospel, it says where you see that, a religion is getting some kind of special treatment, you should also try to get that.
And what would you hope to do with, if you had your own bank account, you could purchase your own assets? What would be the aim?
The aim would be we could raise money and we could do a lot more Feed the Hungry events. Ultimately, we would love to build a homeless shelter, mainly for people from the Rainbow Pride community, because they're very let down by the religious homeless shelters.
Do organised religions, recognised religions at least, have privileges under Australian law?
There is no such thing as a recognised religion in Australia. There are just exemptions from things. So you get tax exemptions, property tax and all that sort of stuff. You don't have to pay any of that. Whereas if you're a secular organisation, you'd have to.
So you would be hoping that the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster could benefit from those same tax exemptions?
I was not ever going to apply for tax exemptions because I believe all religious organisations should be paying tax.
So it's sort of in a way the opposite, that you don't want either you or any religious organisations to get tax exemptions.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, well, let's look at your most recent application. Now, this was rejected. One of your arguments was that it was formed for a religious purpose, or if not, it was formed for an educational, charitable purpose. Now, the senior member of this tribunal, Ms. Kathleen McEvoy, refused your application. So let's focus on your leading contention that the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster was formed for a religious purpose. So what were your main arguments in support of the contention that Pastafarianism is a religion?
It has all of the same elements of any other religion has. We have a whole set of people who believe in this. We have a certain subset of people who believe in the Flying Spaghetti Monster itself. Not everybody does, but some people actually do. And we have rules of behaviour that, we're supposed to follow. Not everybody does, of course, but nobody does in their religions either. And there's no difference, really.
So you're saying that believing in a flying spaghetti monster made of pasta and meatballs and wearing pirate costume or colanders and following certain suggestions for being nice to other people is no different from the practices and beliefs of any other religion?
Well, in a sense, because some people don't believe in the spaghetti and meatball version of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. They believe in the concept of there's something that's out there and it touches everything in the entire universe at the same time, which, could be string theory. It's part of everything.
But it's not necessary to do any specific thing in order to be a Pastafarian as such?
No, just be alive.
Now, your opponent, the commission represented by Mr. Ambrose, argued that Pastafarianism is a hoax or a sham or a parody religion, and that some of its texts, in addition, would be insulting or offensive to genuinely religious people. And the judge seems to have basically accepted these arguments. For you, where is the mistake in this approach?
Because they don't understand the satire. I did make the argument that a modest proposal by Jonathan Swift was not an instruction manual. It was basically a satire against the idea of poor, starving Irish people eating their own children. It was an attack against the attitudes of the day and the policies of the day. And that's what the gospel is.
And so the gospel of Pastafarianism, what exactly, if it's satire, what is exactly are its real or sort of its most important fundamental purposes?
To make people think about faith and why do we have faith, which faith we choose, why do we choose that particular one, which rules are we supposed to follow, which are we supposed to ignore, what do these weird parables mean?
Is it also to criticize some of the worst practices of formerly established religions?
Yeah, to an extent, but to do it with humour. Because if you get people laughing, they're not as offended as if you just go at them angrily about something. We have a 30-day policy where basically try us for 30 days. If you don't like us, your old religion will probably take you back. And that's kind of a way of saying that some people can't leave their religions because, various reasons. Either they'll be in danger, they'll lose all their friends, their family. That's not going to happen in Pastafarianism.
What positive benefits would you say you provide to people?
comfort, because people do need comfort. They need a community. They need a community of like-minded people, and they need to be able to, feel like they belong to something. So they don't feel like they're outcasts, which a lot of people who leave their religions, they do feel that, because they no longer have their families, they no longer have their friends, they have to find their way out in the world, because they doubted their own faith. And so we just offer them a safe landing spot.
What do you do with your fellow Pastafarians in person?
In person, we have our Feed the Hungry events, where we just basically, open up and we offer pasta meals to anybody who comes along. We don't care what faith they are, whether they're part of the Rainbow Pride community, whether they, what colour their skin is, whether they agree with us or not. We don't care. They can just all come and have a feed. We also do social events, obviously not so much since COVID has occurred.
Is part of your point that all religious dogmas are based on faith without any scientific evidence, and that they're no more convincing ultimately than saying that global warming is inversely correlated to the number of pirates in the world?
Yeah, well, there is no science in faith. Faith is faith. If faith was able to be scientifically proven, we'd know which one was the correct religion by now. But for some reason, people seem to have a desire in them to have a belief in something. And since they do, there's probably a reason for that.
The judge was sort of forced to effectively define religion and say that Pastafarianism doesn't count as religion. Should it be the role of the secular court to say what a religion is and isn't?
It absolutely shouldn't be. The whole thing is that the law should be applied the same to everybody. There shouldn't be a thing where you can get registered for being religious. It should just be whether you have an association, everything you're doing is legal, and that should be the only criteria that there is.
Where do you think Pastafarianism is going in Australia? Do you think it's going to get bigger or smaller over the next 10, 20 years? Any ideas?
I think it's going to get huge, to be quite honest. The numbers that we're growing at, it's pretty exponential. So we're going to just get bigger and bigger and bigger until the point where they can't ignore us.
What do you think the aims of Pastafarianism as a movement should be around the world in the next couple of decades?
To question religious privilege, and also to promote the fact we should just always be nice to each other.
Don't religions promote that idea?
Yeah, some do. Some don't, and that's the problem.
Might there come a time in the future when Pastafarianism was no longer necessary?
I hope so. Doesn't mean I hope it goes away.
What would society have to be like for Pastafarianism not to be necessary anymore?
For everybody to be treated exactly equally.
Captain Tanya Watkins, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
My third guest is Dr. Tony Meacham, a lecturer at Coventry University, whose research interests include comparative constitutional law and the different ways in which different states treat religion. He was previously a civil servant in Australia, working in the areas of social security and higher education. He will be providing an objective academic perspective on the place of religion in law. Tony Meacham, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on board.
First of all, what motivated you to write your article for The Conversation about Pastafarianism?
Basically, I came across an article in the newspaper highlighting that there was a documentary called I, Pastafari, and that it was screening in the United States. So I'd heard of the Pastafarians, in the general sense, as most people have, and I was intrigued about it. Since I'm interested in constitutional law and specifically secularism and the state's relationship to religion, I thought, well, it's worth having a look at what the documentary was all about and what they were saying, what was the focus of the documentary and so on. So there were a number of points in that documentary I found particularly interesting.
And what were they?
Well, for example, they were showing how Pastafarianism was being treated around the world at different states like New Zealand, the United States, countries in Europe, and where the Pastafarians were saying, look, if we're a recognised religion, then we should be getting benefits, tax breaks, other things that organised religion normally gets. So, for example, a simple thing like if you have a religious headdress, then there are exemptions when you're getting a driver's license for people who are of a recognised religion to have a religious headdress. So they argued, well, we have one too, we should get that exemption. And if we can't, why not? So they're trying to draw out what are the parameters for that exemption, and more broadly, how are you defining a religion through that definition of a headdress. Other points they were making was things like simply saying, look, if you're saying we're not a religion, prove we are not. Give us the parameters by which you define religion or define what is a religion. So I thought, intellectually, that's an interesting argument. How do you do so? Because in centuries past, it's fairly easy to do so. Most countries, you've only had one dominant religion, and when you said religion, what you were talking about was that religion. In the United States, for example, in the early years, you were talking about Christianity and, in particular, Protestantism. So the two were interchangeable terms. In more modern times, however, it's been interesting to see the state trying to determine things that require a definition of religion by having a definition that is all-encompassing, that covers every particular perspective.
So has the idea of the need to define religion really been forced upon states over the centuries, over the years, by the emergence of new religions?
Well, it's not so much a force, I guess. Religion has always had a place in most communities, and with that has had a protected status. So, for example, if you look at the Charities Act in the United Kingdom, it's always been accepted that religion has a charitable purpose, that they educate people, they feed them, they do good things. So in the centuries past, when you had in the Charities Act that the Charities Act will allow a charity to be registered if it's for the purposes of advancement of religion, then the term religion was understood, and you didn't have to work hard from there. You just simply said, well, we're the local branch of the dominant religion. We obviously have a charitable purpose. So our charity for education or whatever has now been submitted to you. And so there should be no difficulty in recognising our application. But in recent years, defining religion has been more problematical.
How is religion currently defined in English law?
Well, it depends. Most definitions of anything are usually only defined in legislation for the purposes of that legislation. So for the purposes of just one piece of legislation, you may have a definition that doesn't match with others.
So, I mean, in English law, we've got, say, the Charities Act, which defines, religion or has religion for the purposes of charitable purposes, would include the advancement of religion. Then we've got the Equality Act 2010, making religion or belief a protected characteristic. And then we've got the Human Rights Act as well. So do these all three have different definitions of religion, or have different definitions been developed within them?
Well, they do. I know I'm sounding like a lawyer here, but it depends. If you take the Charities Act, it says religion includes a religion which involves belief in more than one God, and a religion which does not involve belief in a God, which isn't terribly clear. It still assumes you understand what religion is. So much of the discussion on the Charities Act leaves the definition to the courts, which doesn't help, because if you really haven't got any sort of parameters for the courts, then the courts really aren't free to just make this stuff out of whole cloth. If you're looking at employment tribunals, they've looked at beliefs in spiritualism, psychic powers, anti-fox hunting beliefs, the virtues of public service broadcasting, humanism. But at the same time, they said Marxist or Trotskyite beliefs, conspiracy theories, and that poppy should be worn for Remembrance Day are not religious viewpoints. For example, if you have a religious viewpoint that says there should not be war, like the Quakers tend to have, but you've got a philosophical viewpoint that says, well, it should be self-evident war is a silly thing, then is that a philosophical viewpoint or just an individual opinion?
Should the fact that the Quakers are pacifists, should the fact that their pacifism is connected with their religion give their beliefs a protected status, which it wouldn't do if for people who were pacifists but non-religious pacifists?
Yeah.
Tony Meacham, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This episode was produced by the National Secular Society, all rights reserved. The views expressed by contributors do not necessarily represent those of the NSS. You can access the show notes and subscriber information for this and all our episodes at secularism.org.uk/podcast. For feedback, comments and suggestions, please email podcast@secularism.org.uk. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a positive review wherever you can. Thanks for listening, and I hope you can join us next time.